All right, so it looks like I'm live. Double checking a thing or two here, and I can confirm. All right, so it looks like I'm live on Google. How we doing out there in learning land, okay? So if you're watching this on Patreon and you're over here with Patreon, you can come over to YouTube and hop on to the chat as well too, so we can kind of chat and interact as well, okay? All right, so let me make sure. I'm gonna go over to Patreon and see if we have any comments over there. A fair warning, I have had some funky trouble with my internet today, so I don't know if we'll be freezing or having any trouble in that regard too. It already looks like it's running pretty slow, right? Hey, what's up, Rob, man? Nice to have you in the house, my man. Always a pleasure to have you here, brother. Okay, so I attached a PDF to this lesson for you guys to download because I want to talk about the C major scale, and the first thing that we should do is review the C major scale. It is open C string, 2nd fret, open E string, 1st fret, 3rd fret, open A string, 2nd fret, 3rd fret. All right. Now, what's cool about knowing scales? What can you derive from this? What power is it? Is it of any benefit to know this stuff? Well, there's a lot of different things that you're going to be able to do when you kind of realize the potential of a major scale. So the first thing that you should know what happens is how to turn a scale into chords, because that is what creates harmony, and that's how the scale and the chords match up. So if we were to make the C scale, why don't we go ahead and map it out on just the C string right here, okay? We get a whole step, which is C to D. A whole step means 2 frets, everybody. So if you hear whole step, half step, a whole step means 2 frets, okay? So we have a whole step, half step, I'm sorry, root, C note, whole step, and a whole step. So that's why when you're looking at your PDF, underneath the C major review, you're going to see root, whole, whole. So that root, whole, whole, bum, 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 is where we get to there. Then we're going to go from the E to the F. 1 fret is just a half step, okay? So we got whole, whole, half. Then the next time, if you're looking at it, you see that we have 3 wholes, G, A, B, and then a half step up to C. So what's cool about that is that's the same formula that's used to create all major scales. So if you wanted to, for example, make a G major scale, G, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. E major, A major, and those are the intervals that make those scales. But also, you don't necessarily have to start on the first note, for example. You wanted to make it B flat, major scale would be the same way. Here's a B flat note, and you go whole, whole, half, and then you drop down to the A string and finish that, okay? So that's the system that creates the C chord, or the C scale. Now what we do to make the chords is we just simply skip a note. If you have a C note, you would skip the D, play the E, skip the F, and play the G, making it C, E, G. That is our C chord. So we put our ring finger here, so we get 1 more C note. All right, and that is how you use the scale to create the chords. So why is that beneficial? Well, if you're thinking about that at home, you're thinking, well, how can I apply this knowledge to my jamming? One thing that you can do really easily is know when you're riffing or you're composing melody and you go over a C chord, you know you have 3 chord tones that are going to sound great. The C note, E note, and the G note. Okay? And we know that because of the whole and half steps. So if you follow me right now, if that makes sense, let me know. If it's moving too quickly, go ahead and hit me up in that chat. I'm over there with an eye on that. making sure that these ideas are things that you guys are getting, okay? Because I know they're pretty heady. All the chords are made the same way. D, you skip that E, play that F. Skip the G, play the A. So you get D, F, A, or A, D minor. So that's how we compose the chords with the scale. What's cool though too is, this is really cool, you can take that even a step further and add another note at the end, making it a 7th chord. So if we go C, D, skip the D, play the E, skip the F, play the G, okay, that's good. We skip the A and play the B. And now we have a C major 7. Okay, and that is how you know the 7th extensions of the scale. The 1 chord, or the chord made from the first note, the C note, will always be major. And it will, hey, welcome, Jack. It's nice to have you over here, man. Nice to have you over here, man. So, one thing that we're talking about the scales in general and how we make the chords. So if you're caught up to date, you've been watching the Patreon, cool. If you got any questions, feel free to type them in there, because the idea is that we're going to go at everybody's pace, all right? So that will work with all of our chords. Your 1 chord, or the chord made from the first note of the scale, C, will always be a C major, or always a major chord. And the 7th will always be a major 7. 2 chord will always be minor, D minor, and your 7 will always be minor 7. 3 chord, always minor, E minor, and that will always be a minor 7. F, your 4 chord is always a major, and that will always be a major 7. Your 5 chord, G, will always be a dominant 7. So you probably noticed in a lot of songs you're playing, it goes G7 to a C. That's a very common resolution, as G7 is the dominant and C will resolve it. And then your 5 or 6 chord will always be A minor, and it will be A minor 7 by its natural extension, with B diminished. That's actually a B diminished 7. I think a B diminished would maybe something more like this. Will be your 7th chord. Okay, so that's how that works. Now, what does all that fancy stuff mean for us as rock and rollers? What does it mean for us as musicians? Well, let's say we have a chord progression that goes C, A minor, F, G, back to C. Those chords are all from the key of C, which means our C scale is going to be how we create melody, jam, riff, do everything over those chords. And if we know a C, for example, has a C, E, and a G note in it, we can use the scale a little more educatedly, or a little more directly, and get the melody and the chords to work. And that is harmony, my friends. Whew! That was pretty a long-winded explanation. Let's break this example down and give that a little more flavor, okay? So the C chord with the C, E, G will be, I can target the C, E, or the G notes. Now I go to my A minor, and A minor also has a C note in it. I make my chord and I see A, E, C. So while I'm jamming from these 2 chords, these 2 chords, I'm going to keep that C in the back of my mind. And what that does is it helps me target it over those notes. Now, there's a C note in the F chord as well. 3 chords with our C note. The G, however, does not have a C note. So we can think about, okay, we can target the G note, the B note, or the D note. What happens when we target the B note? And the G note, and then back to C. So my chord progression was our riff would be something like. Okay, so that is how I create melody and use the major scale to target some notes while I'm improvising. Now, it works the same way through composition, and it works the same way through chords. If you have a C chord, a D minor, an F, or E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, you know you have access to those chords whenever you want. And you can play them in any order you want because you know they're all from the same scale, all right? So I can go C, D minor, E minor, G, and C. And you can experiment with orders and get different ideas. Once you have a chord progression that you like, that's when you start to apply the scale to the chord progression. Now, if you are a one-man band, I know some of you guys out there are, that's what chord melody is. You can play a C chord and know you have access to your C scale. So I can go. And that's what I did there, was I was combining the chords with the scale, but still strumming. And that was just an improvised chord melody, okay? All right, so if you guys have any questions and you're over in the chat, feel free to leave a comment because I know that that's probably gonna be a little quick for some people. And it's probably gonna make your brain hurt a little bit, okay? I know Rob's been doing these live lessons for quite some time. So he's pretty on board with a lot of these things that we got going. But if you're just getting involved, it can feel a little tricky, okay? All right, so the other way that this works is you can mix the chords and the scales a little bit. Not all chords have to be like this. Like we talked about before, a C chord was a C, E, and a G. And remember, we did that by C, skip the D, E, skip the F, G. But I can also play the C chord then like this. Shit. Hold on, guys. My internet might have collapsed on me. Because my internet just kind of went out, so I'm hopping back on. All right, sorry about that. If it, all right, sorry about that. Like I said, I've been dealing with these internet problems a lot, and I'm just having guys over here change the. All right. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that, my man. Okay, so we're back on. We're back live again. Good to have you back again. Sorry about the internet, guys. I know it's really, really poor. But hopefully I'll have this fixed before the next live lesson, all right? So another thing that we want to talk about, though, is these arpeggios. C, E, G, C. Is I'm just playing these notes, open C string, 3rd fret, 3rd fret, and open E string. And that works for all these chords, okay? You're not limited to just the C chord. So check this out. Our G string is in the G chord, G note as well, B note as well, and a D note as well. Now we did that, again, same way we figured out all the other chords using the scale with that formula in the PDF, okay? So I can do something like this. back to G. Okay, and all I was doing was just playing the notes of those chords in a different place. And that's how moving these shapes works as well too, because if you have a C chord, a C simply is a C note, an E note, and a G note. So this is also a C chord, okay? It's come from this A shape, B flat, B, C. And because it is a C note, E note, G note, and C note. Now you'll notice that shapes repeat because this is also a C chord as well, barring the 7th fret, middle finger, 8th fret, ring finger up here on the 9th fret. Also a C chord, okay? So that's another benefit to knowing the scale. And if you're the second ukulele and someone's jamming, change it up to a C, a G, A minor, and F. Okay, and that was just kind of a little riff, and that's even how riffs are made. When you hear things like a lot of times what they're doing is mixing chord tones and scales, okay? So that is how you compare the scale to the chords and how you mix them up together, all right? And that is a lot of this lesson so far. The last thing I want to talk about is how scales are created in terms of stability and instability. So if we're in the C major scale, our most stable tone is a C note, okay? That is where it resolves. But the order of stable and unstable, we'll say that, let's talk a little bit about resolution. Resolution, when you're in C, is that feeling of it being complete. When I play the C major scale and I get to that C, it feels very complete. But watch what happens when I stop on the B. That C resolved, okay? That makes it stable. Now, in a scale, there's notes that naturally want to move to the C. In fact, all of them want to move to the C, but some want to move to the C even more than others. A C is your most stable tone. The 5th interval, now if you're looking at the PDF again, I have them in order at the bottom in terms of intervals as well. The 5th interval is a G note. What makes it the 5th interval? C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But after the root, G is the 2nd most stable, with E, the 3rd, being the 3rd. So if you're creating a riff, you're creating a melody, you're creating a solo, and you pause, those 3 notes are going to feel the most comfortable to stop on. Let me give you an example. Root. 5th. 3rd. Root. Now watch what happens when I go. That 7th. That one really wants to move. So after the root, 5th and 3rd, which are very stable, you have these tones that are called semi-stable, which for us are going to be the 2nd and the 6th intervals. All right, if we're looking at that PDF again, the bottom one, D note is our 2nd, and A note is our 6th. These are semi-stable. So when you're jamming and you get to these, okay, they do have a little pull. They want to resolve a little more, but they also add color and they're not overly tense, all right? So we have our most stable tones and our semi-stable tones. The last tones are unstable tones, which would be the F, and the B. And that's, ooh, just the two of them sound really sour, right? So what we're doing is, at the end of the day, when we make a pentatonic scale, we're actually just removing these two intervals. That's why a pentatonic will always sound good. That's why a pentatonic is kind of like bumper bowling. That's why a pentatonic has no bad notes, because it just removes the 4 and the 7. But when used correctly, the 4 and the 7 can add a lot of depth. Okay, and that's the difference between the major scale and the major pentatonic. Now, it's good to know when those are chord tones. For example, if this is an F note, and we go to an F chord, that's a good time to use it. Or a D minor, because it's a chord tone, right? And you want to, when you're improvising, try to maximize using chord tones. Well, that's not true, because dissonance is a good thing. I like the 7th. I like the 4th, because I like it making it feel uncomfortable. All right? Okay, everybody, so that was a C major scale breakdown. Does anyone have any questions about that? What can I do? I see Rob and Jack have made comments, but we have a couple other viewers. If you're watching on Patreon, click on the YouTube link, actually click on the video, and it'll take you over to Google, and you can chat with us, okay? So once you're over on the chat, we can ask each other some questions, all right? So, questions, C major scale. That's how you make chords with it. That's how, well, that's what the intervals are. That's how you create arpeggios. That's how you use the two to mix them up into chord melodies. Now, each one of these on its own essentially could be an entire video as well. That's why I wanted to kind of introduce as many of these ideas to you as you wanted. If you have any questions, if you want to know more about that, kind of think about your questions, post them on Patreon, post them on here. I'm happy to dive further into these ideas with some other videos, okay? I know that it probably starts a little slower, and then these ideas build and build. So if you're just out there, you go, okay, I can play the C major scale, but I'm not quite sure how to turn that into a chord. That's a great place to start. And if you are kind of in that getting your toes wet with chord melody, I would encourage you to compose your own chord melody. For example, you got a C chord. You know C, E, and G are your chord tones. Only use those chord tones to get a vibe, to feel how they connect. That whole thing was done with the C chord and just the C, E, and G notes, which are 3 notes in our C major scale, but also the 3 notes from the C major scale that make the C major chord. You can repeat that exercise to D minor. I have a D, F, A. All right, so as we know, F is dissonant, A is our 6th. So this is going to be a little trickier. Again, you don't need to limit yourself to those 3 notes when you're making chord melody. And in fact, it would be boring if you did. When you play a C chord and you go from the E note to the C note, it's fun to play the D note as a passing tone. All right, so that's just an improvised chord melody. I know my improvised face could probably be a little more handsome, but that was just an improvised chord melody. And again, it goes to show the power of understanding the scale and understanding how it makes chords and understanding how those chords and those scales connect in terms of improvising. And that works all up and down the neck, all right? Okay, so again, I'm wrapping up. Any doubts, any questions, feel free to ask. I know those were some heady topics. I know we talked about a lot, but it was a pleasure teaching you guys. I'm going to just play you guys out. I will jam a tune that I've been, one of mine, a core melody of mine. And if you have any last questions, kind of why this lag happens, go ahead and feel free to leave them in the chat. All right, everybody, take care. Thank you so much for tuning in.